good. Something good to justify the fact that we're coming back here, well, basically 2 more times, all things considered. And actually, I may make a special trip just to go down to this floor specifically, just 1 more time at least before we attempt to come back here for Coda and everything. So it turns out that, yeah, I forget if I actually mentioned it, but as far as early elemental coats go, there's actually light and dark that are available right here for these 2 floors specifically. And this one right here is the far easier one to get. There's a dark dragon that drops the Jiggler dark coat. So that's basically part of the Jiggler set. Long story short, not using bows for this run. But if you're looking to pick up the entire set, yeah, it's available pretty easy. It's probably why a lot of folks wind up with one of those for free. Now, I will note that I want to pick that thing up not for what it had in vanilla. Basically, in the vanilla version, they gave you an augment to that element, which, interestingly enough, is probably the reason why it was restricted on a lot of classes. So there's kind of a weird thing, like especially with the Lord class, in which a lot of the restrictions seemed kind of arbitrary, like especially the fact that you couldn't get elemental vests on denim and stuff like that. And part of it was because a lot of that stuff had an extra augment on there of that particular element, and if it ever causes the level to go above 12, the game just doesn't work for whatever reason, which is likely part of the reason why they restricted them the way they did. But one way or another, mostly the reason that I want to pick up the dark coat is because it has a hell of a lot of light resistance, and whenever we're doing San Bronsa down the line, that is going to be a must. Because I want to have, ideally I want to have light and heavy resistances for whatever element, and especially the light resistance. Because, yeah, that crap is gonna suck without that. And if I recall correctly, the vest has like 30 or 40% light resistance on there. Something like that. And then from there, there's the dark, or, yeah, the Aganista light coat, which is well, I mean, it's just the light version of the same thing. It is not unique, funnily enough. The Jiggler set you can only get one of. The light coat you can get several of. It's not like it's super useful, but a lot of the dark stuff is kind of unique for one reason or another. But yeah, you can get that one over here. It is a where was it? It is a Hydra. So that Hydra right at the very start, off to the right, that can drop it. As far as other stuff that's available, also over on 8, there was a chance for one of the water dragons to drop a whisker coat. It's not really something I'd really go out of my way to pick up. There's only one area where there's enough fire flying around. That's going to be the, I mean, obviously the fire temple. That's the only one that there's going to be enough fire flying around that I really would want some kind of resistance against it, but truth be told, I'm pretty sure that we can get around it with other methods. As far as other stuff that would be handy here, 10 is one of those ones that actually has, well, a hell of a lot of drops. This is actually probably my favorite floor for farming out glass pumpkins. But yeah, you can just come in with an archer, just like pop 3 of them, hope that they drop something and retreat. Personally, I find this method a bit easier than the very first fight. It's technically similar, but in terms of how easy it is to snipe them, I just personally prefer 10. I think it's mostly just because you have to take a few more steps. For 10, you can just shoot at them right from your very starting tiles. From the first one, sometimes you got to take some steps. It's really not that big of a difference. But yeah, you can get Holy Crowns, Glass Pumpkins, and Thrown Weapons for the crafting book here, which that will be nigh on guaranteed. There's a really high chance for the Beast Tamer that drops the thing to spawn. It wouldn't be amazingly useful for this run. In fact, I'm not really thinking there's any particular reason to go pick it up. I haven't been using sidearms as much this run. I've tried to employ them a few times, but generally speaking, there's just been more effective methods. So yeah, if you have sidearm users on your team, I mean, you're more than likely almost guaranteed to pick up the book, because you got to go through floor 10. But either way, as far as anything else goes, let's see. Yeah, Thundercoat is available on 12. Here's what I don't get. Like, just one of those bizarre things that makes no sense to me. You can get your city ring, so the warp ring I already picked up outside of here. You can pick that up in floor 7, right? You can pick up wing boots in floor 9. Like, those are the 2 best movement methods available. Then some guy was just sitting there like, oh, you know what? You know what we need, like, 5 floors above that? The grease string. Yeah, that'll, man, that'll really do it. That's gonna be a real seller to go down those extra floors. And yeah, I don't know why, why you'd ever use the grease string in either version yet. I know that it's gotten buffed recently, but I'll be honest, it's just, given how much good stuff, like, even in this case, like, you have a necklace that'll make you friggin' stun immune, and you're gonna get a ring that'll make you able to walk on water. In both versions, there's ways to avoid that, like, just off your basic items. So, personally, I hope the grease ring ends up getting a buff at some point to make it a bit better. I'm sure its stats got improved, but I'll be honest, on stats alone, I doubt it can be anything that would end up justifying all of it. I'm trying to remember why exactly I didn't just leave this place already. Oh yeah, no, I did, actually. Anywho. Let's go ahead and go here. Because, yeah, apparently I didn't save my little shopping trip here. Wow, that's suspicious. I get an email that comes in. It's like, oh, you will not regret checking this. No, I'm pretty sure we'll regret checking that email. I'm pretty sure that's one of those ones that causes your info to disappear. But okay. So, there's something I want to test before we move on forward. Because I want to test out how our stats hold up with the wing boots. So instead of Fervor, we're actually going to slap on... where is it? Do I already have Consecrate Edge on here? Yeah. What can I put on instead here? I already have TP. I think we're already running everything that I need to. I probably should run Sanctuary, all things considered. Yeah, Rampart, we can slap on there. I probably should run Sanctuary for the fight down here. Because, yeah, the main goal is to go through the graveyard, but there is a interesting thing. The more that you go on, like, right now, the AI is functionally about as strong as it gets. They have a huge power boost once you hit 30, and then from there, everything just kind of starts dropping off. Just stuff does not really hold up well for them. And especially, this is especially true for just a lot of the, well, the DLC fights especially. Those ones will never scale past their original areas, and for the most part. There's some that are specifically set as random, but for the most part, they're not really going to move anywhere, so any story fights, they're just going to be at 25, so we have a massive advantage there already. But when it comes to the random fights, they'll never get more skills past this point. They'll never get any more massive power boosts or anything like that. Out of curiosity. Yeah, 2,500. Like, it's just not worth it. But yeah. No, I'm not going to sell that thing. I might need it. But yeah, it's just weird. It's just... Well, it's not weird, actually. It makes sense from a design perspective, I suppose. It's kind of interesting because they had so many moving parts to try and balance out. Like, the more that I go on with this, the more I understand why things were balanced the way they were in vanilla. It was just completely over my head for the longest time, but it's just like, okay, I can kind of appreciate some of the weird crap that happened there. I'm just gonna go through this real quick and make sure that there's nothing I can grab here, because I'm trying to think if I have any reason to pick up a Crucible Reaver. Because the Martell I probably should. Just because it might be a really handy thing to have. It's basically a knockback hammer. Cigaris. Wouldn't be a bad idea. I think it's the best axe I have access to right now. I forget if this is actually... Hang on. Let me go pick up a couple things. First of all, let's go get some of this stuff up to scratch. Daggers. No, I have a better one. Damask, I already have. Have better. The Labrise, I should probably pick up. Two-handed axes, I probably won't be going for. Trident. Yeah, I already have one of those. Mace, I have. Maul, I'll pick up. Already have a Muso. Probably should pick up a Black Steel. See, I should consider it, but I really don't want to. This wouldn't be a bad idea. Like, this is one that'll end up dropping. I'm not going to pick it up, but if I end up getting one, I'm going to keep hold of it. Basically, the mask helmets are they just got improved visibility over the last ones, so you can get some good stuff out of that. I'm just looking over what's potentially mastered and what isn't. Yeah, no sense in really using this. I actually come to think that that probably would be a good one to pick up on him. Remove curse, that'd be handy. I didn't actually realize I had decurse. And in fact, I think at this point it's probably a good idea to just go down this list and just learn everything that he hasn't already learned. Even if I'm not necessarily going to be using it, it's just handy to have. Then I at least know what I can sell. And yes, there's that little notification on the bottom right there that says what's in your inventory, what you've mastered, etc. But realistically, it's hard to say whether it's him or Cash whether knows this stuff. Like, I'm actually not sure if he knows Regenerate. That might be her. But I'm going to pick up all this stuff now. The ideal still would be to get the Lord class here, which I'm probably just going to go back for. That's probably going to be the easier of the two approaches. Evacuate we're actually picking up because it'll be convenient later. Sometimes there's cases where we have to save NPCs, or we'd want to save NPCs. But yeah, I'll go ahead and get all of these. Again, don't know how I'm going to go about using them. I am probably going to do that whole build with Ninjutsu and Divine. We'll see. We'll see if there's anything else I want to go with on that. Time of Need. I feel like that could be really potentially handy under some very specific circumstances. I'm just going to pick it up. Absorb MP, I don't really see that ever being useful. Steadfast, maybe. Curse Ward, yeah, I should probably pick that up. It's been a problem before. Venom doesn't come up that often. Silence Ward, I will have answers for later, but we'll go ahead and pick that up. Stun Ward just for the hell of it. And then Clarity 2, I don't see that being a thing that'll come up, but it's there. Overpower, as much as I'd like to have it, I don't think I'm ever going to run it. Okay. So now we go ahead and pick up some healing. Now we're going to wind up with drastically less than last time. But yeah. So I'm going to test out something. Now we're going to go over to Frampa, or not Frampa, we're going to go over to Tynemouth, see if we can't maybe make a little bit of profit. Because I would think at this point we should be at the point where we can start making a profit. So for the sake of clarity here, if you go into Pirate's Graveyard and you don't necessarily do all the story stuff, I believe as long as you trigger the first Azelston fight, which is map 3, I believe at that point you can no longer retreat. So what I'm going to do, or rather you can retreat, but you'd break the story. So basically what I'm going to do is I want to see if I can maybe get some resources out of this. Ideally I'd like to go in there with 99 as far as seeds go. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But we'll see. The second part of this test is to actually see how good these flying boots are, statistically speaking. Alright, don't think they got a healer here. Nope, doesn't look like it. The best training map in the game. There we go. We should have no trouble with this. Those guys, the melee guys can just infinitely be held off right now. They're not going to be running siege or anything, so I can more or less run around, pokeify anything. As long as there's no healer here, all I got to deal with is the archers, really. Oh, he's running siege, actually. But we got parry, so it's fine. It's all good. Yeah. probably worth running a 143 on this. Silence that guy. Now, even if he's running Siege, he won't be able to run through 2 tiles. So if we move here, there we go, he has to run through 2 Rampart tiles. This guy's got almost no chance to hit whatsoever. He's almost down. We can get a Consecrate off on this next turn. Now, it all comes down to whether this guy will have his finisher yet. Yeah, he will. Give him the old Longinus. Alright, there we go. Not a very good item for this, but oh well. Parry, please. Thank you. Fantastic. Yeah, I think we should be at the point that we can safely grind this one out if we really needed to. And honestly, like, okay, so at this point, the main stat that we want to get more of is health. Because like, healing is a problem. Until we get the last classes that I'm looking for, healing is going to be a constant problem. And the best thing that I can do is 50%, and basically the more health you have, the more goodness you get out of that. So yeah, the plan is more or less just increase health as much as possible, and hope that everything works out. Now we are about to get friggin' wrecked in the butt, unfortunately. That guy got his finisher. And that is going to get rid of our finisher. Because unfortunately we rolled about 1 damage too low. Actually, yeah, if all the archers hit, then we're kind of screwed here. Ah, well. Still, though, you can see how it could work out. That's fine. We'll just reload it. Honestly, even if there's a healer, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we can silence, and they'd have to have 2 healers to be able to deal with it. Because actually, Field Elk isn't required. But okay, even with Field Elk not being around, in a lot of cases you can still get extras here. So yeah, I feel statistically we're doing okay. We can replace Stopboard, maybe. Yeah, let's try replacing Stopboard real quick. Replace that with Fire Og. There we go. Yeah, most fights here we should be able to just deal with. If we'd rolled high damage on that one, we would have been perfectly fine. Alright, so kind of to better explain my plan here. So what I'm going for with Tynmouth, if we are able to set up a case where we finally make a profit here, then we can max out our items. Then we could potentially grind out some stats, actually, because we have not really had an effective method of grinding stats up to this point, just due to the fact that well, with one guy, there's really only so many cards you can get. The later on you get in the game, the more stuff you end up, or rather, the more cards you're likely to get a hold of. The higher level you get, like especially around the midpoint here, they're not nearly as likely to drop some of their better stuff. It's like basically your level. I wouldn't say it scales as much as just you have more changes that come to your drop pool as time goes on. So a lot of them, by the time you get to like 30, 40, whatever else, like with every level that goes up, you're kind of just going up the list of drops there, so you're more likely to get some of their better stuff. But around this point, like around the 30s, it's just starting to slide over, which typically lends itself pretty well to getting a lot more cards, because a lot of the items are considered very high value. And I'd assume some of that sliding scale stuff might be why some of the items are priced so weird. Like in vanilla there, like a lot of your endgame items are just trash, well, they're worth nothing in the store. Like most of them are worth about 50 or so, and yeah, usually the logic is, you know, here's this amazing item, we want to make sure you don't sell it. But it does seem kind of weird where it's like, okay, here's something that is beyond an upgrade to anything you could possibly have. It's worth about a quarter of the price, it's fine, just take it for free. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't recognize this material, it's glowing with some ungodly aura. Oh, that means it's garbage. Alright. So I think for the sake of easiness here, we're just going to go ahead and slow these two down. There we go. Then we're going to go for this caster guy. They might take a turn to pop some healing leaves on themselves. Realistically, pretty unlikely that they'll do anything useful. Go ahead and miss that, please. Thank you, sir. And yeah, even if they have a healer, again, we've got a counter to completely shut down one of them. And in most cases, because it'll be a two-shot... Ooh, okay, that's a good move, actually. Alright, good move, good move. I mean, it's not really gonna save anything here. Realistically, we still have just as many options as before, we just can't really move while doing them. So we still got our Ogre up, might as well get rid of this guy, because his finisher is about to come up. And I really want to get that card, so we're just going to go ahead and leave that there. Want to increase my my RT ticks until next time, so I'll actually go ahead and give myself a slow return. And away we go. Thank you for the parry. Thank you for the stabby. Yeah, we should be able to two-shot almost anything. Going for a summon. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, these guys aren't running Augs or anything. If you have an augment, the summons are going to do a ton. If you don't, they're going to do next to nothing. That's kind of what it just boils down to. And if this hits, we're almost at the point of having a... I was going to say we have some nice fancy moves available. Yeah, this guy is definitely the more guaranteed takeout here. Please do nothing useful. Please don't take that card. Please. Thank you. Perfect. So we should be able to get that card, should be able to get that bag. No trouble. And unfortunately we still can't move, but that's fine. I can't imagine that they're going to really do too much here. And actually that I don't mind. Because it looks like we should be able to get out of this without requiring any kind of healing. For the sake of safety, I probably should go after that one. But I really want these cards. Worst case scenario, we use a healing item. It's not the end of the world. Alright, please miss. Ah well, we still have a snipe on him. Yeah, they've got a long ways to go. Because we're still only at half health and most of their team is gone. Yeah, Giga Tempest is probably one of the more handy sniping moves. I'm just so glad that Spears wound out good. Like it's weird because like it's weird how all of this comes together, because in both Vanilla and in OV, when it comes to Spears, like they're good, but they're not like super powerful or anything, right? But then when it comes to both solo runs so far, they've just been incredibly useful. And yeah, I just love that that's a thing. Alright, we're gonna go for that. She's probably gonna go for a finisher. That puts her in a little bit of a dangerous spot, maybe. Thank you for finally blocking. I don't think Flight would overwrite this, would it? Yeah, she's not super close to a finisher yet. I guess what I could do, I could just go ahead and deal with it right now. I think I saw Farron Bolus drop before. Definitely need to pick some more up from the store. Ah, don't have it. Yeah, I'll take a safety heal. It's unlikely. Like, they'd have to get 2 hits in a row and, you know, and all that. So it's super unlikely that she can actually do anything useful here. But yeah, there's that first hit. It's just she keeps rolling those 50%. And gone. So that'll get rid of that bind. Then we can run back to pick up that card. Gives our nice handy stats. Yeah, we didn't need it, but we would have been in danger of getting wrecked here. It's not a bad thing. Oh, that's nice and good. That is nice and beefy. And then, yeah, Time Mouth just gets easier and easier. Like, as soon as you finally have the gear and the skills and everything else to get past those initial waves, you can start doing some good stuff here. So there we go. We made a profit finally. It's just pure profit now. Got a bigger ring, got another level. Good, good, good. We don't necessarily need the boots here, but you know what? I'm just gonna get used to using them as they are. So yeah, we're just gonna grind this out a little bit. I'm probably not gonna do the full level 50 grind up until we get the Lord. Since, I mean, passive skill gain isn't really a thing, and we're really just picking up cards for stats. But yeah, it's just the higher level you go past, once you can deal with it, the higher level you go, the better you get. Because they are all in their maxed out state. And yeah, once we get to the very end, they're going to be scaled all the way up to 50 anyway, so we're going to have to get there at some point. Ideally, I want to have most of the classes up there. At least the ones that I'm going to be using, just because, you know, adjustments will have to be made, and after a certain point it won't be possible to go back. Most of Coda 4 is just one giant gauntlet, so we actually shouldn't have too much of an issue as far as going back goes. So, let's go this way. This particular layout might be more of an issue. Alright. We might be able to overwhelm that guy. Best bet is just going to be to go for the finisher. So yeah, we're going to go for the cleric first. And it might not be a terrible idea to start thinking about running deflect here. Hello there, Mr. Cow. How's your day going? Hopefully pretty alright. Gonna have to do a little bit of healing. So we're gonna run up, we're gonna heal. Now we're gonna hopefully trap her in there. Run a Consecrate. Just so we can keep that strengthen up. They might go for a Dispel. I'm hoping that the Fencer from the bottom will move up, and then we'll be able to take his, basically have him get healed. We'll see. Because she should prioritize healing him. So she shouldn't be able to move now. She's gonna do her plink, as you do. Alright, we got a little bit more Og Light. Fantastic. So we should hit even friggin' harder. It's basically an extra base 4 attack, which can scale up pretty decently. Actually, it's one of those things I've been really adoring about that Iron Griffin run. I don't know if anyone would have tried it yet. Ah, you terrible cleric. How dare you. Well, it's fine. They're going to get rid of the light buff first. Again, handy things of this particular setup. Alright, it's going to be an almost instant delete. Alright. So best case scenario, she'll use an item, or she'll just do that. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, endgame clerics have some pretty beefy staffs, so they'll sometimes do stupid stuff like that, and just get themselves killed instead. Fantastic. Anywho, that's actually probably why base game clerics were, had such low damage, possibly. Because they're, okay, so low staff damage is only at the very start, so it kind of makes me wonder if maybe they originally just, like, nerfed staff damage for the purposes of, like, okay, we noticed that the clerics will attack if you silence them. We put a silence finisher on the axes here. You know, you're just basically going to cause a cleric to just run and friggin' slap itself onto a spear. Maybe we should nerf those things a little bit so they don't attack or something. Like, I feel like almost every part of the base game was like, here's one problem. It's like, we could just not put this thing in. No, we need that feature. Okay, fine. Let's put 50 band-aids on it and call it good. But that's what I've been loving about that weird run I was talking about, because yeah, there's so many aspects to it that it's just, you get to feel what they were probably thinking with the base game balance a bit more. And yeah, it just leads to some interesting stuff, because functionally it's just you're using the only AI units. So you have one guy with like recruit and whatever skill, whatever items you happen to be carrying. So their overall active skills and things like that throughout the game are like pretty much just trajectory and Dragon Slayer. so yeah, not a whole lot of gigantic options there, but yeah. I think we'll take another turn to heal here. Because the main one I want to go for, let's see, with if I silence the caster, she's not actually doing anything useful. She's repeatedly trying to land a stun with a 0% chance, so I guess not super threatening. She's training my Og, so that's perfectly fine. For anyone wondering, it doesn't matter how many shots are fired out of this still counts as one use of light element, and that's it. He's just taking care of himself, to be honest. Yeah, I'm better off going after the archers. Probably putting him giving him a slow. Ooh, that's tempting. Okay, that problem took care of itself. Can I Charybdis you somehow? Not really. Could go for that one. Yeah, realistically, she'll just go for the spear. Probably just get herself finished off, so we'll just do that. Just so that I can at least get one of them down. I mean, archers are going to be the big threat here, but oh well. And you can see, like, they're still trying to scale at this point of the game. Like, base game, their problem by this point was that they were beyond overpowered because of their crazy scaling, so they would just punch through armor like nothing. They pretty much never missed. Like, just armor became almost worthless because of how good they are. Which, I mean, I kind of wonder. Because a lot of aspects of the way that the game is originally laid out, you could tell that they were trying to create historical parallels in a lot of cases, because they went out of their way to really specifically detail a lot of stuff to the point that I'm curious whether some things were legitimately mistranslations or intentionally there. Like the other day, I had posted up a video that it seemed super out of place for the longest time. How there was a quote-unquote like Viking sword. There was just a random two-hander. And all the other stuff, like they bothered to go into extensive detail over construction of armors and things like that in the descriptions. They went through, all these different uses of different weapons, and then just stuff was just out of place for one reason or another. And hell, even freaking remembered something like the Zeist. And yes, they technically got it completely wrong in terms of what it was, but in terms of its placement historically, surprisingly, that was on point. I'll get to more on that in a minute, but like, yeah, it seemed like a big theme of the gear in this game was just trying to show how stuff happened through history. And around that point, where guns are introduced, you start seeing armors start falling off. Not necessarily like it's actually becoming worthless, but just the fact that you're better off running and things like that. Now, historically, this was simply because when you start having something that you can train a hell of a lot of people to use very quickly, namely guns. Like, originally, so you started with bows, they were very effective, but they took a hell of a long time to train people to use. So, everyone had their archers to some degree, but nobody really relied on them as a main military force outside of England, really. Because for them, it was like, okay, let's just train everyone to use one of these, and then we're just going to have a big old pool of them, we're going to pay them extra, they're going to be amazing, and yeah, people were freaking scared of their bows. And it's not like they could punch through armor, but reasonably speaking, most lighter sections of armor were very pierceable by warbows. Like, it would just punch right through that crap. So yeah, plate, no. Everything else, yes. It was like shields and plate, just like solid chunk of metal was really your only hope of actually not getting injured by one of those there. So okay, so all well and good. But then, yeah, for this one, it kind of got to the point where they, you can potentially make a build, like, if you have a shield and armor build in the base game, you can potentially resist most of the archers in the game. However, the ones that are player-made, no. Nothing can resist those. Like, even by the time they get to rank 8, by the time they get their Augs going, by the time they have an elemental bow and everything, that they have a racial skill on there, that thing can get almost no damage through and still do a crap load of damage. Like, that's just the bizarre part of it. Alright, so we got the Colcrium. That's not really going to be an upgrade here, for the sake of comparison here. So, Colcrium is 136. It's 2% extra scaling damage, twice as much anti-undead damage. Gives a extra parry bonus. Gives twice the avoidance bonus. It's still a divine element. But yeah, it's a 2 to 3 spear, so I don't want to be using it. I'd rather be using a short-range spear with a heavy shield. Hi there, Gamma! Glad to hear you're alive. How's the being alive going? Did you happen to catch ye old friendly influenza? Anyway, so just to kind of finish off with the tangent before I forget, so yeah, the big theme throughout the entire thing, like, look at spears, for example. You start off with the Bronze Age Bronze Spear, you go into kind of like Alexandria times, you end up, once you get to around the Greeks, you have the Zeiston, you end up going up from there, you start getting your more fancy metals, later on you get up to your Damask stuff, and then from there it starts going into all kinds of crazy territories. But just the point being, they had a vague following of history on there, which it's just an interesting thing. Let's see, being alive sucks, flu hurt, weak, back spine hurt, coughing also hurt. Yeah, the latest, I'm assuming you guys also had A over there, but yeah, it's latest old fun of influenza was fun. Head also hurt, can't think or play game. Did you ever end up picking up DXM? I know you can't play it, but did you end up getting it? Because, like, I just want to point out, for the very first time, like, something AC related was both released on PC and actually got positive reviews. It only took more than 20 years, and finally the series got positive reviews. Hi there, Black Chaos. Hope for a healthy year. Get 3 sicknesses. I mean, that's why you don't hope to not get sick. When you assume you're gonna get sick, that's when you wind up healthy. See, I've been expecting to get sick for ages now. I've been, like, Lysoling the hell out of everything, spreading hand sanitizer and everything, whatever else. And yeah, it's been, like, my wife gets sick, but so far the kiddos and I think we're in the clear after friggin' germ nuking this entire place. Let's see. Why is there no category for Knight of Lotus? Love that game, wanted to stream, but no category for Pepihans? No, there actually is. There absolutely is a Knight of Lotus category. Just put in Tactics Ogre, and it's the second one that comes up. I've streamed it before, absolutely adore that game, and actually it's the next solo run on the list after this. Funnily enough, every previous challenge I've always started with Knight of Lotus, but for whatever reason I decided to start it solo with luck this time around. Not the kiddos they want eat, not sick? Exactly. And that's why we've been Lysol nuking this place. Can't smell anything, like, even if we wanted to, but dang it, them suckers are healthy. Alright, can we ruinate? Not really, we gotta go for this cleric. But yeah, so we're finally at the point in the run here where we can fly and we can make a profit in Tynemouth. So from here on out, like, it's go time. Like, we can actually get maxed out stats if we wanted to. We can finally go back and save Azelston, which right now, yeah, it's just plain grind. I don't need to do the grind, but right now, just there's been such a lack of grind that I really just want to grind. I know that seems stupid, but I want to get Light Aug 8. I want to get Fire Aug as close as I can anyway. Alright, anyway, let's see, really want to play Luck 2. I haven't played anything days. How does it compare to KOL? Totally right, just didn't see it in the search initially. Well, okay, so Lucked depends on which version you play. Lucked SNES is like a harder version of KOL without the badges, and honestly, like, it's one of these cases you can tell that it was the precursor. Like, it was the OG of the entire frickin' genre for all intents and purposes. But yeah, Lucked SNES is pretty awesome. What I would recommend, the guy that made this mod made a made a mod for that one called Old Vision. It's not... It doesn't, like, throw in the features from this or anything, but what it does do is make the original more approachable. So part of the problem with the original Lucht on, like, SNES and PS1 and Saturn and all that is for all of its good features, man, oh man, does that thing love kicking you in the dick for no reason. Alright, that'll slow them down. This is risky. This is a complete risk move here. I'm gonna assume there's not much that they can finish me off with here, because that'll make sure that their cleric can't come back. I'm assuming this will be oh crap, that's a problem. Might be dead here. Yeah, I assumed they wouldn't possibly land a 40% plus 55% in a row. Whoops. Oh well, that's fine. Let's see. Try a diet of fruit and vitamins and just now eating normal meat. You need to chug that OJ, man. But yeah, for Night of Lotus, I'd say it was definitely one of the friendlier games in the series. Because yeah, Lucht SNES, it has the same thing with instant permadeath. So if a unit dies, they're just dead. Your revive items, like you have both OB64 and Night of Lotus had the revive items, the altars. I don't know why I find the word altar so hard to remember today. But yeah, so those are pretty good, but yeah, and those ones are limited by their pretty extreme cost. In SNES, you don't get those. You have Resurrect as a spell later in the game, and you have and you basically have an item. You basically get Blessing Stones, which you get in this one, but they don't revive in the original. In the original, your unit still dies. If they're carrying one in one of their 4 slots, they can come back to life. They come back to life with, I think, like 3/4 of their health. If they die again, they're just dead. But yeah, it's kind of the long and short of it. Let's go make use of our sweet Nikes that took a hell of a lot of effort to pick up. Why not? Let's see. Head spinning, don't have a good balance when standing up. Broken body, at least I can use my fingers to type slowly. Fair enough, fair enough. Also, this cleric is a terrible person. Ah, jeez. Weirdly enough, another thing that I found helps, and this might just be a terrible idea, but agave. So, usually honey's the recommended one, but for whatever reason, was chugging a hell of a lot of agave this last time, and every time I started feeling slightly sick, instead just wound up with diarrhea, which, yes, sucks, but at the same time, also, it's better than, you know, better than flu. I don't know if it works that way, but hey. Totally felt like it did. Like, not feeling good? Drink a cactus. There we go, advice for life. Anyway, so back to the whole Lucht and KOL comparison. Personally, I prefer KOL. But that's mostly because they had a lot more time to refine the ideas there. Like, the scale made a lot more sense. When it came to Lucht, it seemed a little weird that they had this whole, like, dramatic story and everything. And immersion for that one is amazing, by the way. Like, they do a really good job with the setting and everything else, especially for a friggin' SNES game, you know? It's just it's insane how on point it is. But the thing is, yeah, there were definitely more features in KOL, and on top of that, like, the badge system was better, the classes were more balanced. They had a whole bunch of kind of oversights that ended up coming up. So, for example, we had stuff like Berserkers, which are supposed to be your low defense class, actually having higher defense than Knights, because your actual defense calculation is a combination of your strength and vitality. And seeing as they've got really high strength and still kind of decent vitality, and the Knights mostly just have high vitality but kind of crappy strength, you wind up with a situation where, yeah, there's just an overall better result coming out of the Berserker there. So yeah, fun times there. But yeah, in general, like, I feel like KOL had better balance, it had better all that. It was a much shorter game as far as story and, like, setting and everything else. I'd say Lucht was the stronger one. As far as... Ooh, actually, I can just delete this one. Delete! But yeah, the one thing, I guess, it also depends on how you feel about, like, leveling, leveling, all that kind of thing. Levels mattered so much more in Lucht. Like, to a almost comical degree. You almost had to do the training grind between fights. I say almost because you can technically get through it if you know what to cheese when. But yeah, it's one of those ones that you definitely, like, after the end of every fight, just, like, immediately throw everyone in training and walk away. It's kind of more or less just how it goes. Yeah, it's an Empress. We don't really need MP. I would turn on... So, the wing boots here would be useful because they'd allow for getting dispelled without losing our strength in. I'm just going to leave it as it is for now. Like, personally, my favorite version of Lucht is still going to be One Vision. I love the vanilla version. It has its problems for sure, but like, as far as very certain challenge runs, I still enjoy it. It's a very unique experience, I will give it that. Like, the SNES and PS1 version is... It's an experience. That's the best way to put it. It's just... You just gotta let it happen. It's really just one of those games that you don't want to optimize anything, you don't want to do any of that. It's just play how you feel like playing and just pretend it's not a game. And there you go. I don't know how better to describe it than that. Get 92 there, 92 there, 73 there. Yeah, we're just going to pick on this one until we get a finisher. That one's going to launch her finisher, put us into Leaden. Which will make those two a problem, so we're going to have to keep turning sideways to keep them away. See, what is One Vision? Is a modded version. It's basically an immersion overhaul, for all intents and purposes. It takes a lot of the good aspects from the SNES version. It takes a lot of ideas from the rest of the series, as well as a lot of just overall solid design improvements and things like that. So, for example, with spears, before you could only get two-handed variants, and when it came to crafting, it was just like, here is spear +1, or look, it's just better in every way. Oh wait, it's weight increased by 1. Don't you feel punished yet? And yeah, usually it just resulted in really OP equipment. But in this one, instead you have your, like, you can have one-handed spears, you can have two-handed spears, you can have short range, long range. Like, instead of having passive buffs, like, you have 10 skill slots, and then previously it was like, oh, you get Strengthen, friggin' True Strike, whatever else, and you're losing about half your skill slots to just passive crap that would be there otherwise. And on the one hand, it allows for easy customization in some situations. Oh, crap. Well, I just misplayed that real hard, because now we probably just lost it. But yeah, when it came to trying to, like, give the game your all and everything else, when you wanted to the game to be difficult, it tended to break. Like, for example, archers were absolutely busted to the point that, well, there were a lot of systems in the game that were just abusable. They were fun to mess around with, don't get me wrong. Like, there's a ton of stuff you could mess around with in the vanilla PSP re-release. But man, oh man, could you snap that game in half like nobody's business. Like, the early game, absurdly breakable. Once you get to the late game stuff, it tended to balance out somewhat, but you still got to issues where certain characters became nigh invincible to damage, unless you used specific things, or, you know, just use archers that just obliterate everything with no trouble whatsoever. But yeah, it's fun to mess around with, but it definitely had a lot of flaws. It's like an improved version of FFT, in that respect. Like, it doesn't completely explode the second you know how the system works, but you can really break a lot of stuff in there. Like, when I was doing the solo run of that one, it basically just consisted of going through and cycling through every single class, because each class levels individually. The unit has no individual level, but it has specific stats that are tied to the character. And so every time that you level them up as a class, you get slightly better stats, resulting in a situation where just using the 5 starting classes at the very beginning there, as well as abusing the fact that certain dex weapons can completely break the game. Like, especially daggers, of all things, scale really well. So you can just make a situation where you got a guy running around and just one-shotting everyone with a frickin' knife, and yeah, it led to some interesting shenanigans. And actually, we might be able to pull this off still. Even if we end up losing a profit, I still want to pull it off just because I'm mostly here for the profits. I'll go ahead and put a concentrate on here. He's still talking alone? Wait, who's talking alone? But yeah, so yeah, One Vision is a overhaul mod that it takes a lot of the stuff that didn't make sense. So for example, where you had revive items that were suddenly added to the game, which were redundant, because originally in the SNES and PS1 games and Night of Lotus and the whole rest of the series, except for March of the Black Queen, but that's mostly because that game was meant to be chaotic. You still had a punishment for losing units, but either way, you weren't meant to be replacing units all the time. The whole theme of this game is supposed to be loss. Like, every unit you talk to, you know, they've got some stake in the different wars going on, but in general, the whole theme is just everybody's lost somebody, everybody's getting ruined in some manner or another. You know, you want the conflict to be over, which tends to feel a little weird when suddenly you have a system where they added a bleed out timer from FFT, they added a countdown timer from FFT, no, sorry, I'm referring to the same thing because I'm an idiot. Also, I just got myself reshackled. Good job, idiot. Definitely should not have walked toward that cleric there. It's kind of the problem with double cleric maps, but still might be able to pull this off. If I go over here, that is. Anywho, back on track here. So, they basically added a redundant death system where you had a live system, that's those 3 hearts on by the health bar there. You had a bleed-out timer, and on top of that, they added revives available from the very beginning of the game, and they're pretty easy to get a hold of. So, yeah, it just felt like there was no punishment in the game at all. Not to mention, on top of the fact that they added a system for just resetting your turn anytime you wanted to. You could just go back in time and undo your last 50 actions. It's just like they went out of their way to add so many ways for you to well to basically undo whatever you did. So I will say for the purposes of this challenge, no Chariot or whatever else is ever used, unless it's for the purposes of fixing something that's dumb. For example, you know, drops. Because, yeah, they added this weird drop system to this one. The whole rest of the series, if there's a unit that's supposed to have a particular item, they will drop that item, instead of like, hey, let's make it a 1 out of 20 chance for them to drop their unique item that you can't friggin' get anywhere else, and you have to spend like 4 hours to get to. So, yeah. But yeah, OV is kind of going through line by line of code and fixing all that stuff, so yeah. Sounds pretty beginner-friendly. Yeah, it's definitely a fantastic intro. Like, I will say that much. The way that I played the series was I played Night of Lotus first. That was, like, well, technically I played FFT first. They're not officially part of the same series, but let's be honest, they're the same series. FFT is a boiling down of Lucht. It is the Chaos route of Lucht, made into a more digestible and user-friendly situation. Because, yeah, the original was brutal as hell. And, yeah, like, in SNES, PS1, all that, you would have units that would just run, like, you would pile onto a boss, and they still might crit and one-shot anybody in your team, and they're just dead for good. So yeah, as time went on, your armor became less and less useful. You were usually better off just running people around with maybe one piece of armor of some description, usually an orb, because for whatever reason they made a mistake and they programmed them with negative weight. So you basically had a portable nuke that you put on people that you never used because it made them lighter for no apparent reason. And then, yeah, you could cheese a whole lot of things. You could stack elements over and over and over to create a situation where you just, well, more or less overpower an element like crazy. And yeah, I will say, every game in this series and genre will have stuff like that. Like, just stuff that you can, that they probably intentionally left in there, you know, as like a, hey, you know, here's your toys to mess around with, let's see if anybody finds this kind of situation. This particular game, the vanilla version of this, it tried to appeal to everybody at once, tried to be appealing to new players, you know, with its ease of use features. It gave titles if you didn't use those to try and appease the older folks. And in general, it's a fantastic game. I'll be honest, I love it. It's easily one of my most played things ever. I mean, hell, it's been some like 10 years now, and I'm still playing this thing. So yeah, the mod definitely helps, but it's just a fantastic game, and it was made as a love letter to the genre, quite frankly. Like, they tried to add a lot of stuff. They tried to reference everything. They tried to do all that. Some places they succeeded, some places they didn't. And basically, the mod tries to figure out what exactly they were going for and trying to more or less finish the project, because you could tell that after a certain point, and apparently this is reflected in the internal code of the game and all that, after a certain point, it became too much for them to handle. There was just simply too many moving parts, and they just kind of did their best. Because this is, like, my initial review of the mod alone was 600 hours. So, yeah, it's a bit of a long game. And bear in mind, that one wasn't even covering all the areas or anything. I was just going through, seeing what's changed. But yeah, that was before any areas changed even. So yeah. And I should point out that, yeah, despite all of the... Please, RNG, thank you. Despite all of the insane amount of stuff that went into this, it still only has 3 bugs that are pretty rare. Like, it's one of the most solid SRPGs I've ever played. Hell, one of the most solid strategy games, period. There's always something busted. Really, the only noticeable stuff that tends to sneak its way in there is the fact that some of the experience rates are a little bizarre. So, for example, stuff like take Sacrology, right? It's like your ability to get a slight damage bonus against friggin' angels. And it's like, okay, where are you ever gonna need this exactly? It's like angels are more or less a couple of unit types that you'll run into several hundred hours into the game. It's like, by that point, you really don't need a, like, 4 damage increase against them, do you? It's like, no, but you can rank that up to, like, friggin' 36 or whatever. Like, yeah, no, that's not taking one of those 10 slots. It's like, by that point, you've got friggin' anatomy giving you friggin' 30+% extra damage against certain things. It's like, it's weird. There were so many scaling systems in this game, and that's actually part of what got a little bit broken, which most people don't realize how those things break the first time through, so that's fine, all things considered. Like, in most cases, like, I didn't run anatomy on any one of my characters my first time through, because I was like, oh, you know, it improves your fighting against people. Okay, fine, but I don't need them to be a doctor. I don't know what this is all about. And so, you know, didn't end up using it. And then, yeah, it's this whole complicated system where, like, it takes one character's physical strength and stats and everything else and compares it with another one. Then they compare all of their equipment. Then after that, they take all the resulting numbers. So, like, your initial damage bonuses off of those stats and everything else. Then your equipment stats, and then from there it scales up based off of a few other things and, like, damage bonuses that you've got going on. So suddenly, like, originally, like, let's say your guy would have run up and, you know, shanked him with a sword or something like that, and they would have done, like, 10 damage, and then you get all of your insane damage bonuses going. All of a sudden, they're doing, like, 300 damage out of it. Like, how exactly did we scale up this hard? But yeah. There were some spectacular situations like that you could do. Like, I think my favorite example was from this Iron Man run I was doing last year. And that one was for vanilla. And I had a guy, one of the white knights that you can get. He was there with his spear, and I think he was, like, up to rank 4 or something like that. And he's fighting the last boss, and he can do, like, 4 damage. For whatever reason, he's got no scaling going on for him, and he's just having a rough time. So you can barely hurt the guy. He can't get through his damage threshold at all. Friggin' Ozma comes around with dual ice blades and has all of her augments and has all of her, like, maxed out sword skills and double attacks and everything else, and she can do 1200. Now, bear in mind, Murden in this case was training the entire time, like since I got him. He's been training for a good 2 chapters. I've been doing side quests and things like that. He has full like crafted out gear and everything. And here comes this other character that I literally hired right before entering the final area, and yeah, she's just over there hitting like a friggin' oncoming freight train with rocket boosters flying out from space attached to a rocket. It's just insane. But yeah, it's one of those things where most of that stuff really wouldn't come up that often for a first-time player. So it just, like, as soon as somebody discovered that, it was usually that moment of like, oh crap, I'm a friggin' like numbers wizard here. How did I make this amazingness happen? So, you know, it works. I'll be honest, I don't really have too much against that system after thinking about it for a while. Because, I'll be honest, for a decent bit there, it really bugged me how many things they left in there that were really obvious exploits, but like, I like going back and forth between the 2 versions to get a sense, you know, try to figure out the mystery that was the bizarre balance of these games, and honestly, I can understand why they went the ways they did. You can, and like I said, you can still tell where they ran out of time. But yeah, like the fact that you could tell that they wanted different rates for everything to train up, but they clearly didn't finish it. So, for example, like Fusils, you get access to your guns a decent ways in the game. Like right now, I'm right before the point that I can go and get them. I might lose out on that bag if I go for it's Hermit. You know, I'm just gonna take a couple hits. It's fine. You may notice in this mod the archers are basically like Knight of Lotus archers, namely that they're pretty decently accurate. Right now, their accuracy is getting ruined by the rain, and the fact that I've got really high resistance to their stuff. On top of the fact that I'm facing them for even more evasion, but they've still got their guaranteed shot here, which is still doing a pretty hefty chunk of damage, all things considered, but they're mostly just plinking off my armor at this point. But mostly, the most noticeable thing that a lot of people look at when looking at the mod is just that stuff in general feels like what would have more naturally developed in that setting. So there's a sort of Matsunoism to the entire series. That's the only thing I can describe it, because I like to imagine that he just sits there snorting lines of coke and naming out features, and then they just gotta make it work. But I mean stuff like where there's just arbitrary things that you really wouldn't think anybody would have developed. Like, in many of the ones that he was more hands-on with, it's weird that the Valkyrie is even a thing. It's like, for example, take March of the Black Queen. It was one of the only female units. Stuff like the Siren and all that were pretty good, but it was basically a hybrid unit that was almost always worse than everything else around. And there was really not too much need for a hybrid unit in that game, but, you know, they were still kind of there. You had a backline caster that usually couldn't do much of anything. They weren't a very good frontline fighter. The idea was supposed to be that you could kind of make a team of them, and then they would swap around, and then, like, say your front line got injured, you'd swap out the formation, and then suddenly, you know, you could have them as casters. But then they also weren't defensive enough to really make it through that. So then, like, when they came back for this game, or rather, when they were around for the original SNES one, like, they were slightly better, because the utility was a bit more useful there, because you could essentially have somebody that could attack from all ranges. And then, like, in this version, they decided, like, okay, they just functionally have infinite MP instead. Which, sure, I guess? I mean, it's weird. That's the best way to put it. It's just weird. But yeah, they were always kind of weak and difficult to make work, and then, like, you have the ones in Knight of Lotus that are easily the best class in the game. But that's mostly because the morale mechanic worked a lot better there. Which, actually, I should probably point out, the morale mechanic also exists in the SNES version, but not in this one. They kind of reworked the morale mechanic into other things. So, KOL definitely handled it best. It really wasn't too good. Or rather, it really wasn't well implemented for SNES. Mostly it was just affected by certain classes. So, for example, you had the Terror Knight that would give everybody a -1 in their radius, which kind of made it seem like they were better in some very oddly specific circumstances, but generally speaking, we're still kind of a trash class. Especially the fact that you had to literally go through a friggin' genocide in order to be able to even get them. In this version, they got reworked to where they have they have two versions of a debuff that allow them to do something similar, which tends to work a bit better. In the vanilla version, they're still pretty worthless. But yeah, in the mod, they're amazing. They're one of the better frontline classes. And that's mostly what the mod does. Like, it takes stuff that would make sense. So, for example, that Terror Knight, they're there as a morale unit. They're there to ruin morale and hit hard and do all that kind of thing, but for some reason the rest of the series was just mean to them. Let's see. Enjoying listening to a lot of the stuff is above my head? Well, I'm glad to be entertaining. Hopefully y'all are getting some out of this. This is trying to explain the weird mystery that is this series. But yeah, no, there is so much that can be discussed as far as the series. I love it. I mean, there's just so much weird stuff in there. Because yeah, there's so much stuff that they couldn't even decide on. Like, okay, like take for example zombies. They work different in every single game. Like in March of the Black Queen, they are invincible to all physical damage, but then they get within breath's length of an exorcist and they're just instantly deleted. But then you get like haven't seen Guy Sunder in a minute. Then you get to SNES, and it's like they'll go down, but they'll revive almost instantly, and they're a big threat from that. And then same thing. Exorcist comes along, just poof, they're gone. So they're a little bit weaker. Then they decided they were a little bit too weak, so then it's really difficult to actually exercise them in Night of Lotus. And in OB64, they actually are your own units. That if your units die, they just turn into zombies, which I think is the coolest method so far. But see, I only played Night of Lotus, but I love it so much. Looking forward to playing more of the genre. Yeah, there's so much to look into it. Just bear in mind, when you're going into a new game in the series, just like approach it with a fresh state of mind, because there's definitely there's different mechanics every single time. But yeah, KOL is amazing. And speaking of, there actually are modding tools for it. I've tried to get a few people to go make a mod for it. I've started trying to work on one myself a few times, and it's just I've never had time to fully dig into the tools is the issue, because it's there's a few things that weren't working right, and I couldn't quite figure out why. Alright, noticing a little bit of a problem here. I need to check the weight on the wing boots, because I think I might be misreading something out of that situation. I think those guys might have been running light armor is what's going on here. Let's see. Not going to hold one game over another. Yeah, it's a little bit like Armored Core in that respect. Just like every game was its own little sandbox, where they were just messing around with whatever they could. Sorry, just checking randomly, because for some reason I thought it might have messed up the counter a little while ago. Okay. Yeah, these only weigh 1, so they're gonna be a good alternative to pants. These weigh 3. They give a little bit extra, but it doesn't seem like 2 weight would do that much, but it does. Mods for KOL sounds hella complicated. Surprisingly, not so much. So, it's actually something that I found out about a year ago. Again, I've tried to make a few changes to it. It's just the systems in KOL are a lot more limited, because in every one of these cases, you're usually going to be limited to whatever's like already supposed to be in the game. Like, usually you can take existing effects and move them around and stuff like that. So, for example, with this mod, you may have noticed a lot more debuffs flying around and stuff like that, and it's mostly because a lot of the weapon effects got applied to more weapons. So, for example, you have claws, and you have 2 different versions of claws. So, like, you hit... In the vanilla game, claws were just like another heavy weapon, and just like every other heavy weapon, they scaled with strength, but they weren't very amazing. Whereas in this one, you've got all these different kinds of claws that your basic ones won't do much damage, but they've got poison on there, plus they're one-handed. I mean, they've got some heavy two-handed variants later, including the, I think it's like pronounced Jamlafrogger. They were your Daedalus gloves in the original. And like those ones, for example, it's functionally a shotgun fist, like from New Vegas. Like, it'll do a little explosion and punch somebody backwards, and it's pretty awesome. But yeah, this one just has more features and stuff like that going on. So yeah, like your basic claws will poison, and then you've got your side-graded claws that'll punch somebody right in the MP and stuff like that. It's awesome. Where's Armored Core mods, dude? I don't know. The only Armored Core mods I've seen are, like, turning your AC into frickin' Sailor Moon and some crap for some reason. People have done mods. Actually, there's one game that has actual mods for it that are actually available, that actually work. And that's friggin' Formula Front. Because, of course. Because when you think of the entire AC series, Formula Front is the first one that comes to mind, of course. Yeah, I don't know how exactly that happened either. Oh yeah, that one too. I think they even use... I think it's just a recoloring of the same thing, even. Actually, this is a terrible move. Why am I doing it? Alright, yeah, I think I might have just thrown this fight, because she's just gonna run up and use Crystallize. Come on, dodge! Dodge it! Yeah! Only 28%, basically guaranteed. But yeah, like, there's some pretty fun ones for Formula Front. Like, you have one that you can replace machine gun bullets with pursuit pods. And just cause the game to crash. It's pretty great. Machine gun missiles are pretty awesome. You basically just have Matrix mode at that point. Yeah, it's pretty alright. Actually, I think I have those, don't I have those posted somewhere? I know I posted them into the Discord a while ago. Because some of them needed some translation. But okay, so yeah, sorry, to go back on the whole mods for KOL thing. So yeah, it can. Like, you can have mods for it. It's this, if you look up Night of Lotus Nightmare tools, ooh, this guy just screwed himself and his entire team. Good job. So Nightmare is a program that lets you edit certain, like, SNES and GBA games and stuff like that. It's just basically a sort of a convenient hex editor of sorts. But you can only readjust stuff that's already there to some degree. Which, yeah, there's surprisingly little of for KOL. There's really not too many actual mechanics flying around. Well, I mean, there are, but not ones that would be affected. But you can, for example, change requirements for emblems. You can move around weapon effects. You can change any stats that you want. And yeah, was messing around with trying to make a sort of One Vision-esque mod for that a little while ago, but I couldn't get a lot of the effects to stick. But you could do stuff like put Eleanor's ability, like the whole Star TR ability, on short swords, which unfortunately the AI does not know how to utilize, but it would be hilarious if they did. So you think I didn't sleep at all? Kept waking up every hour is not fun. Yeah, that sounds like flu. I do believe you might have been sick, sir. I have no hard evidence to back that up, but that does definitely sound like something that might have been possible. It's a definite at least 1% possibility. Maybe. Kinda. Sorta. Also, where did I put my water? Also, we're about to get leadened and die. You okay there, Pugman? Dog's making weird pig noises over here. Parry? Ah. That's fine. At least he isn't running Poison Claws. Later in the game, a lot of the Mage Hunter Claws tend to have higher attack stats, so they're more likely to spawn in with them. Alright, can I move yet? Nope. Alright, we're running into an interesting situation here. I think I need to reduce weight slightly. Probably replace the heavy shield with light shield. Because, yeah, what we're running into is that they're getting double turns. Mostly because we're stacking up. So, in the background, there's a sort of RT debt going on here. So every time I'm moving around, the heaviness of all this gear is just building up little by little. Actually, it might be a better idea to go for the vest. Man, if I just had an elemental vest at this point, that would be quite handy. But yeah, like in the base game, by this point in the game, a lot of your armor becomes more for its bonuses than its actual defensive stats or anything. It's like you can run dark armor simply for the dark augment, but its overall weight makes it almost functionless as an actual defensive item. Need some coffee? Yes, you do, and put some agave in that mess. That'll make it feel good. It also might cause the bathroom to be extra busy, but hey, you know what? Agave's good. Freaking love agave. Yeah, nice thing about these wing boots, on top of the fact that they let you frickin' fly, that 2 weight difference. Yes, we're losing out on resistance and other things, but it's a solid upgrade. Alright, hang on, I need to step away for just one moment. Alrighty, and I is back. Okay, so what I'm thinking, if we go over here, we should still be out of range of their cleric. So go ahead and slap one of these on here. And not sure why that took a minute to register. Yeah, we might have gotten a crit finish there, but I will go for one of those. So, I should point out, by the way, Black Chaos, one thing going into SNES that might be a little bit weird. Like, I don't know whether you were planning on starting with SNES or the PSP version. Like, honestly, I would say probably start with SNES. Like, see if it's just, you'd appreciate the remake more after playing that. Which is weird, because then you also appreciate SNES more after playing this. Like, personally, the order that I played them in was Knight of Lotus, then I played the remake, and then played SNES. And yeah, definitely preferred SNES originally, and then wound up liking this one more over time. It's just weird like that. Alright, so we're just gonna try to speedrun this. Go over here. Now what I want to do, yeah, we don't have fly anymore. Yeah, probably claim this bag, take some counterattacks, then run forward. And so there's actually one specific change in the original, or rather one specific change that the Knight of Lotus did, that I feel changed the game a ton strategically. See, because in the original, if there was a character with higher stats, they will, quite frankly, completely annihilate anybody under them. And basically, Knight of Lotus's approach to this was the fact that they had kind of rubber-banded damage of sorts. So stats were prevented from going too insane, and they also tended to have situations where if you attack somebody from behind, they weren't exactly getting all of their... they weren't getting their counterattack. In the original, if you had a character with higher stats, like let's say you had a boss that you were attacking and you tried to pile rookies on there, they will go in there, they will usually do 1 damage or just get blocked, and then that guy will turn around and one-shot them. And this applies to almost every boss, every mini-boss, every rando, just guy that happens to have a unique name. It was super prevalent. So yeah, it was pretty harsh. They ended up adjusting a lot of that stuff for this one, where most of the bosses and stuff like that are... In the vanilla game, they're more... they're just regular units with very slightly higher stats and usually some higher skills. So, like, the skill system wasn't implied until the remake. In the original, it's like Knight of Lotus. You have your dudes. They are your dudes. They've got their 4 slots. Except they've got about 3 or 4 times as many stats as Knight of Lotus. So, for example, right here, instead of agility, strength, and intelligence, you got strength, vitality, dexterity, agility, avoidance, intelligence, mind, resistance, physical, natural physical attack, natural physical defense. Same for well, magic only applies in certain circumstances. You just have a physical defense, but you have a ranged attack power, etc. So, a whole lot of different stats going on. And yeah, you could really, the more stats you have, the more moving parts there are, the more stuff you can snap in half, as the rule goes. But yeah. It just resulted in a whole lot of insta-death or insta-winning. Instead, sometimes, after you got past the first few levels, it was less prevalent, but bear in mind, you couldn't hire units of a particular level. You either recruited people from the field, which only your leader could actually recruit in that one. Knight of Lotus also let you recruit with anyone. Your odds were usually sort of okay. Like, I'd say that they were about equivalent to having the arbitration emblem from KOL. But yeah, in general, your odds were roughly about 20-30% as soon as you actually got built up. Or rather, as soon as you got their health reduced down in decent ways. So yeah, you could just run around with with one character. You know, just have your leader here running around and recruiting everybody that they saw. And many times you wound up doing that, because if you tried doing Iron Man run of that game, you needed new people a lot. And yeah, you could grind them, you could train them, you could everything, but them suckers are gonna die. Somebody's gonna get slapped off a cliff. Somebody's just gonna get a random crit. Like, stuff will go badly at some point. And that's really the whole theme of the game there. That's just like, it's supposed to be a theme of loss. You're supposed to lose people. You're supposed to constantly, get new people and, like, hate the fact that you're losing folks just randomly. And, oh, you suck with that 25%. This is what I get for taking Stop Ward off. So yeah, Stop Ward, by the way, not a vanilla skill. There's a lot of things that the mod added for convenience and everything else that just didn't exist in the original. So wards are one of them. Previously you had resistances and you had immunities, and so basically your immunities took probably like 50 plus battles to actually be able to even afford, not to mention that they had to be a ridiculously high level to ever even get access to them. Usually, at best, you could get one. In my solo run, I managed to get one single immunity. I guarantee this is just going to crit past defense. Okay, I guess not. But yeah, in my solo run, for the vanilla game, I managed to get one. And I think that was just Petrify immunity. But you can get immunities off of armor and things like that. So, which, yeah, getting immunities off armor and everything, that's not exactly anything new for the series or anything. It's just something that was kind of odd. But you had resistance skills that would improve your resistance to getting hit by any particular ability by about 5% per rank. Sometimes this was good, sometimes it wasn't. Like, for example, you could get stun, the one for stun. You'd think for stun being a really common ability that it's something that you'd actually want to pick up and have a resistance to. Because you can build up those resistances reasonably quick. There's constantly people throwing Paralytic Wave around and stuff like that. Every time it fails to hit, or it does hit, or you interact with that skill in any way, you are put into a position where it'll train it a little bit. And so you can rank that up in decent ways. You can eventually get up to a whopping 45% chance to not get hit by stun after like 100 hours. It takes a freakishly long time to get up there. And that's a Chernoborg. Where? Well, where did what say Chernoborg? That one's got Crystallize. That might have looked like it. She should have just been using Leaded... Or no, she doesn't even have a finisher. Really? I thought the archers had finishers at this point. Why does... I'm gonna have to check why she doesn't have a finisher. That's weird. Why the hell would she have rank 1? Then the last finisher on Denim? Yeah, that was Crystallize. Or do you mean the one that he used? Because that would have been Charybdis. Or... yeah. So that would be Charybdis, the big ol' friggin' tentacle monster thing out of the Iliad. Now, I know Time-Mouth units are absolute garbage, but what the hell is this? By the way, with One Vision, yeah, some units will still have nothing skills. But yeah, this is weird. I guess some of the archers can spawn in with their low-level variant, and or some of them might just never scale up. That's not a mod thing. That should be a vanilla thing. Like, this is the easiest map in the game, by far. All I'm doing is just getting a few extra stats, getting those few extra points, and getting those augments up. Where are we on those, actually? There's Auglight, currently in rank 5. We've got Spears maxed out, Parry maxed out. Augfire at rank 2, not really going up in any terribly fast manner. No, that was Sela. Oh yeah, right, Charybdis was... hang on. Which one is that? Was the Charybdis the... no. Let me double check, hang on. I was just hearing about this the other day, and now I'm constantly mixing it up with stuff. No, Charybdis is in the Odyssey. Yeah, Charybdis was a sea monster in Greek mythology which dwelt in the Strait of Messina. It was later rationalized as a whirlpool. It was believed that Charybdis lived under a rock on one side of the strait. Opposite Charybdis, ancient Greeks believed there was another sea monster, Sela, which lived inside a rock. There we go. So they're basically just sea monster buddies. Thank you, Google. Oh yeah, so what I was saying, so those resist skills, it might seem like something that you would build up over the course of the game, but for example, that stun one, for stun, sleep, charm, and silence, by the second chapter, you could craft items that make you completely immune to them without even taking a skill slot. So, yeah, it was a little bit pointless. Like, they had a whole bunch of stuff in there that was kind of just redundant. Alright, Rampart 4, hell yeah. And then also, we should be 2 levels away from big boy damage over here, so TP 4. To kind of explain what's going on with that, by the way, so TP is your yellow bar that keeps going up. For every point past 100, if a ability is damage scaling, it'll add like 1 to like 1.5 extra damage depending on what it is. So in this case, this would give about 300 extra damage on any damage scaling finisher, on top of their already damage scaling situation, which, yeah, that's gonna hurt real good. So, well, it'll add 200. Let me rephrase that. It'll add 200. It'll sometimes feel like 300. Sometimes it will go to 300. Like, it's not exact. There's a lot of things that it's kind of hard to generalize just because of the way that it's implemented, and it's like, well, it applies to like this in these circumstances and this in these circumstances, and this is why I have an entire website dedicated to it, because there's no way to explain it easily. Game, why you so complicate? Alright, what are we doing with this? I mean, that's a decent haul. It'll at least cover our medical expenses. And like I said, my goal here... Oh, I'm an idiot. I just sold them. Oh, crap. Well, time to buy a lot more. Whoops. I mean, surprisingly, despite all that, we still wound up in the positive, but... that was dumb. At least we know. So yeah, Charybdis might be the whirlpool, but they also thought it was a creature living in the whirlpool, for what it's worth. This spawn is pretty terrible, and the puppy needs to go outside, so I'll be right back. And back. Yeah, it was the Odyssey. And also kind of Iliad. I mean, whatever, it's sequel. Alright, and you know what? I never really thought about this. But okay. So there's a weird thing that always stuck out with vanilla games balance when it came to spears. So in the early game, their balance is mostly that they do about 75% damage of anything else, but they hit 2 tiles. So, well, hi there, Cerebo. How's it going? How's occurrences? But yeah, it seemed really weird that if you wanted to have an endgame spear originally, you kind of just got screwed, because they just decided all spears are 2 to 3 range spears, unless you get the cursed spear, which you can only have 1 of. So suddenly just range is the only thing, and you can't counter anymore, yada yada yada. So, all well and good, I suppose, but what this created was a situation where, well, it was hard to implement. Like, when you had the original spear going around countering, like, you can see why I like short spears here. Yeah, many times you can get surrounded, you can do the double stab with the short spear, and yeah, you're getting solid damage, you're getting all kinds of good stuff out of it, relatively light, no real problems. You get to the 2 to 3 range spear, you don't have a close range counter whatsoever, you don't get that second tile unless you're attacked by a spear yourself. It's just not a good time. So yeah, that's why, so it always seemed a little bit weird to me, but now looking at Rampart 4, which I pretty much never run Rampart 4. I maybe go up to 2 on some units and then just forget about it after that point, because all I really care about is that it stops the tiles immediately next to them. But in this case, like, looking at it, there's no class... Like, I wonder if they originally had meant for more classes to be able to make use of Rampart 4 and a spear, because the Lord and White Knight are the only ones that could make use of this. Because units would come in, stop within that range, like they couldn't get past without siege, and that's it. They just can't go anywhere. They are functionally stuck, and suddenly just get stabbed, and then you walk away, and then there you go, infinite kiting build. So, you know, maybe that was their logic there. It's kind of unclear. Just never really thought about it till now. But that's what I love about this, just trying to theorize why they had such weird stuff. Like, okay, the fact that they specifically have words that say, like, spears are usable by any, usable by every warrior, and then the warrior class can't use the spear. Like, that whole thing, looking at it, I kind of understand why they went for the limitations they did. Now, this is actually from a couple angles, because on the one side, okay, you could say that it's because they had the infinite, they had the guaranteed crit ability, which suddenly would be pretty OP if, if you could get the double crit, which, I mean, it can work pretty well. Truth be told, I don't even find myself running it with having those two in place, but I can see why they would be worried about that being kind of busted. On the other hand, though, one thing that I noticed looking at the kind of weapon selections and whatever else, they're very uniform. They make everything look a particular way. And originally it was always based off chess. But basically, units are going to be locked into a particular range. So for example, the warrior classes there, it's either just going to be, they're going to be a range build or they're a melee build. They have no spears there, they can't go for the 2-tile thing, they can't go for the mid-range pokes or anything. It's just, they usually are just move and attack 1 tile away. You get the Dragoons, usually they're move and, attack 2 tiles away. Well, then again, they also have the crossbow thing, which I guess kind of throws a big wrench in the works on that theory. We'll just go ahead and put this as a theory in the works then. It's like there's so many things that could potentially be assumed there, but it's unclear whether it really went that way. But generally speaking, they added some options for people to be able to add other builds, but for example, I don't think there's ever a crossbow dragoon in the story, largely because it's just the best build for that class, quite frankly. Also, dang it. Okay, good. RNGesus is feeling nice today. They've hit almost nothing. Unfortunately, I lost my buffs, but... Alright. Fair enough. Let's see. Yeah, that'll put me back 2 turns if I move myself right here, I should be able to finish off Ye Old Priest Boy, because they'll probably try to attack from the front. Bind there is perfectly fine. Come on, Lizard. Do it! Do it! Oh, crap. I should have just stayed there. Now he's gonna probably recover from silence and heal. Yeah, there we go. Boo! There's a whole big old chunky heal. Yeah, I should also point out, vanilla heals didn't scale at all. So that healing that you're seeing, it would have been almost his entire MP for about 200 health. Meanwhile, an item could do about 300 by this point. So yeah, same thing as FFT, where just after a little while, you start to see that the casters are falling way behind next to items. Which again goes with that same theme that Matsuno seems to love there of kind of throwing in where medicine is taken over for superstitions and things like that. Suddenly the old medicine healers of the past are just, or the old magical healers and stuff of the past just aren't a thing anymore. It's a cool theme. Not necessarily balanced, but you know, I can appreciate that. It gives a little bit more flavor. And honestly, a lot of these games, for the longest time, have just functionally been trying to recreate D&D in chess, for all intents and purposes. Anywho, hang on. Be right back, one sec. Oh, dang it, it's another one of those. Ah. Yeah, I don't have my, I don't have any admin stuff up right now. Ooh, yeah, I actually used Bad Blood. Crap. Well, we might be screwed here. Especially if that's hits. Yep. Well, we're probably dying of venom before anything happens. Suddenly took a real turn for the dire there. Let's try to run far away. Just gotta get away from the caster. If we rolled low, then there's a chance to survive this. The AI usually doesn't use Bad Blood, so I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. Rip. That sucked. Anyhow, okay, so... I actually have to get going for the day, so thank you guys for stopping by. I know it was mostly just a grind part today, but you know, got some decent stuff out of it. For reference, actually we're almost, hell, we're working our way up to 50 on some stats here. So default for the mod is about 30s. Need some banhammer? Yeah, I'll do that in a little bit. Just bear in mind to do that later. I just don't have it up at the moment. But anyway, I feel like this is... I'm not going to think about why don't I just go for a completely light setup here. Just go for full avoidance. End up being all speedy-like. But anyhow, so that'll be that for today. Thank you guys for stopping by, and yeah, take care.